we were going to jump into entertainment, which was a risky move, we needed to make stuff that people actually wanted to see, not people felt like they had to see. We were going to provide people a safe space where they felt like they weren't going to be attacked for their values, but provide people a safe space, safe space. All of this, the white privilege, the microaggressions, this provides the impetus for the safe space. The vaunted safe space. You need a safe space. Everybody needs to be put outside the safe space, and reality must not intrude. Every fascist in the history of the world has his safe space. Provide people a safe space.
Hello once again from the Kingdom of Thailand, and today we are once again talking about Ben Shapiro and movies, kind of. Now, last week, the first video I made this year was about why does Ben Shapiro have so many terrible movie takes? Now, this is kind of like a companion video because it's also asking the question, why does Ben Shapiro produce so many terrible movies? And those two things do pretty much go hand in hand. So a lot of you guys may have seen like your favorite YouTuber review this film, but for some reason or another, a tweet went kind of viral talking about Terror on the Prairie and talking about how little it made at the box office, which prompted like a lot of right-wing cope, including from Gina Carano, the star of Terror on the Prairie, and people like Matt Walsh coming to the film's defense. So although this film did come out like I think 6 months ago, we are going to talk about it today. We're going to talk about what prompted this to become a relevant discussion again. And then I just want to get into like Ben Shapiro's vision for his movies, like what kind of cultural space they fill. And then I want to get into the reviews of Terror on the Prairie, mainly focusing on Daily Wire fans. And then there's a funny one at the end, which is from a Christian who finds the film quite offensive for its depiction of violence and certain things to do with religion. And I think that's an interesting conversation because the Daily Wire crew are a bunch of nerds who like their movies and they like their entertainment. And it's pretty clear that with the Daily Wire movies, they want to make actual movies. They don't want to make like God's Not Dead 4, which is just so on the nose about crapping all over atheism and stuff like that. It feels like they want to make something a bit better. But often when you have people like Ben Shapiro at the helm and you have these directors who are known for complete garbage, these movies are still going to be bad and they're just going to come off as rip-offs of better movies. Like this movie was made by Breitbart, but I covered it because Gina Carano was in it as well. My Son Hunter was literally just some sort of rip-off of Goodfellas with Hunter Biden's character put in there because these people aren't really capable of coming up with anything original. We're going to get into all of this today, but please like the video and in the comments, please let me know what is the worst conservative movie you might have subjected yourself to? Have any of you actually watched like the God's Not Dead films? There's actually like a whole Christian film industry with just like absolutely terrible movies starring like Greg Kinnear or like Jennifer Garner or Barry Pepper. So let me know down in the comments. Also follow me on social media at the Kavernacle on Twitter and on Instagram. Instagram is where I'm posting all about my travels. I often do like Q&As like I did last night. It's just a better way to interact with me, I feel like, and I archive all like my posts about my travels on my highlight reels on my profile page month by month. So if you're interested in what I've been doing, you can just go have a look at that if you want. And if you're interested even more in what I've been up to during my travels, I also post exclusive travel content on my Patreon page. I now have 2 videos up, one about Vietnam and one about Cambodia. If you care about any of that stuff, check out the Patreon. I'm trying to build as many $1 to $3 patrons as possible, and other benefits include access to the Discord server and getting my Nintendo Switch friend code, and also check out the subreddit and check out my second channel. All of that stuff down in the description. So now let's talk about Terror on the Prairie. You guys won't need me to kind of tell you again, but Gina Carano is a former MMA fighter turned actress. She was in like Deadpool, and most famously, she was in seasons 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian. And while not like the best actor, she did do a good job in the role, but she started posting like really unhinged stuff on social media, and in my mind, rather than being fired by Disney, it appears her contract wasn't renewed after them warning her like loads and loads of times. So then she went around saying she was cancelled, and then she actually got signed up to Ben Shapiro's movie studio, and they offered her a couple scripts. So this is an interview Ben Shapiro did with Gina Carano when they first signed her for Terror on the Prairie, and I just want to play you a few clips of that.
So let's talk about how this whole thing started. So you and I actually got in touch right after you were canceled, and maybe you can tell that story about how that went down.
I was just basically going to put the covers over my head for about a month. And my manager was calling me. He said, Ben Shapiro is trying to get in touch with you. And actually, so then I'm like, well, this is interesting. Okay, so Ben's going to get a hold of me. So we got on the phone, and you you basically said, you have to punch back, and you have to punch back immediately. You have to fight this. And it took me out of the place that I was in, which was, oh my gosh, my life is never going to be the same. I'm going to just completely have to deal with this whenever I can get myself up again. But you helped me kind of get motivated to punch back. And right. And I was thinking, gosh, this is going to take a decade to get back where I'd gotten.
Gina, how did you decide that this is the script that you wanted to do? Because I know we threw a lot of scripts by you. There were a lot of options on the table in front of you. How did you decide this is the one you wanted?
Well, so we were originally planned on doing White Knuckle, this trucker movie, and we had a really good script there, but we needed to. We weren't sure if the SAG union was going to enforce their mandates on us, and I think we were all on board of not letting that happen because the mandates are still actually happening and absolutely ridiculous. And so we decided to go with a non-union movie and had to go with Terror on the Prairie, which I think ends up being the exact movie that we needed to do. It's about a family coming together, going through some really hard times.
So hopefully I played you this section of the video, but it really does seem she's just doing it because she's desperate, because she felt like she would be out of work for a very, very long time for expressing these like ultra conservative views. And I also like the part that they didn't go with that other film because they'd have to hire union actors and keep them safe with like pandemic protocols and stuff. So they made Terror on the Prairie instead. And it just seems like doing these movies is like a last resort for her because yes, the conservative grift can be very lucrative, but it feels like Gina Carano is someone who doesn't really understand politics that well, so she can't just slide into becoming like a conservative talking head on Fox News or the Daily Wire. She still has to do what she does best, and that is acting, probably, but then she has to star in these like really bad conservative movies. No one else really wants to hire her at this point because she is not talented enough to offset the toxicity and the bad reputation she'll bring your film. Like someone like Mel Gibson, who has absolutely abhorrent views, he's also insanely talented, and actually people still rate him as a director and an actor. So for a lot of people, they don't really care about hiring him, although his career has never reached the heights that it had before. So we're going to get back to the Daily Wire movies a bit later, but I just want to show you Gina Carano kind of coping with people criticizing the movie. So this tweet was doing the rounds, and there was other ones just like it. So congratulations to Gina Carano for dethroning the FIFA movie on having the funniest opening box office weekend, and then apparently it made $804. And I couldn't find this because I think the Wikipedia page has been deleted because it's not relevant enough. But it said it opened in 10 theaters across the United States and made like $319 on its first day and maybe grossed about $900 over the weekend in like 15 theaters or something. So a pretty limited release and didn't gross that much, although I don't really know like what a good number for that limited would be. Now, I saw screenshots of Gina Carano talking about this, but then I went on her Twitter account and I'm actually blocked by her for some reason or another. I probably tweeted something or I liked something of like a viral tweet and she has like a block list or something like that. I went on one of my other accounts and just had a look anyway. And I didn't realize how unhinged her Twitter is these days. Like absolutely crazy stuff. Literally just like some far-right conservative now. But then she actually talked about Terror on the Prairie because someone else was talking about it making only $800 at the box office. And then Gina Carano quote tweeted it saying, "Here's a contributor of The Hollywood Reporter who repeatedly joins in an online mob of mostly anonymous accounts harassing me. Are you aware that we released Terror on the Prairie exclusively on the real Daily Wire and you didn't know that? Or are ignorance and spreading hate your only purpose here? I didn't fumble the bag, I just didn't go along with the sellout narrative. The online mob couldn't handle that, so they petitioned to have me fired and won. I'm not sorry for that. I stood for what I believe the right thing to do was, and the more time it goes by, the better I feel. The genuine bag fumble is sellout journalists like you who sold out America and stopped asking questions to be liked by a fickle, manipulated mob. That is what you valued, and that will be your legacy. And then Matt Walsh also commented to the defense saying, this guy turned off the replies because he doesn't want anyone to point out that the film Terror on the Prairie was released exclusively on the Daily Wire. It had one showing. People are making fun of Gina Carano because her film failed to earn money in places where it wasn't showing and was never intended to show. You might as well make fun of the Yankees for never winning the Super Bowl. By the way, the one showing was a premiere event where we didn't sell tickets, so I'm not sure how it managed to make even $804. So I'm not really inclined to take Matt Walsh at his word there. Now, I did some more research and I was trying to find, like, did this release worldwide? Did this release in many theaters? So apparently it had a limited run release, and I can believe that for sure. Apparently it might have had a minor international release. And again, I don't know where these figures are coming from, but it'd be weird to kind of make them up. So apparently it was also released in the UAE and in Russia. So it released in the UAE on August 18th, 2022, and it opened to $2,600 and made $3,600 overall, and also opened in Russia in September and opened to $5,000 and grossed over $9,400 overall. Those are the limited numbers I could find. Again, with the Russia and UAE examples, we don't really know how many theaters it showed in. The UAE is a pretty small country, so maybe that's a good figure. And maybe these people just went along to see like Gina Carano. But what is funny is they're acting like because it's on the Daily Wire, you can't see it in theaters. Like that's something they would never do. But Netflix have done this, and other streaming services have done a limited movie run and also had it like exclusively on their platform afterwards. So maybe the Daily Wire did it, and maybe what happened in the case of the UAE and Russia, just some theater like bought it for like a week or two and then it made them some money. So who knows? But honestly, can you tell me that if there was a massive clamor from the general audiences to watch this movie, that the Daily Wire would not run it in most theaters? Of course they would. They're acting like they're just trying to use it to build their platform. But we all know if they could sign deals to show this to most theaters in America and could potentially make a lot of money, they would absolutely do that. So Gina Carano did absolutely fumble the bag. You can't argue with that. And of course, she had such a great gig. There was even talks of a spin-off show starring her in something like about the New Republic, because that's how her arc kind of ends in season 2 of The Mandalorian. And all she had to do was just not post the most unhinged stuff on social media. Like, she could still probably post like generic conservative politics, but it had to be extreme conservative politics. So I don't really feel bad for her at all. And of course, she doubled down, and she continues to double down in basically every single interview. Now, I want to talk about these movies, these Daily Wire movies, before we talk about the Terror on the Prairie actually not being a good film, which is probably then not surprising that lots of movie theaters didn't attempt to buy this movie to run, because no one actually really wants to see it. Now, Ben Shapiro is the executive producer on this, and he talks about how much he's been pushing to, you know, make these movies. And you guys will know from the video last week and other videos I've made, Ben Shapiro is a failed Hollywood screenwriter who basically blames like liberal sensibilities and wokeness for his screenplay getting rejected, because he has a story where he wrote an okay script, and the only reason it didn't get made into a TV show is because they looked him up online and saw he was a conservative, and apparently no conservatives ever get hired in Hollywood. So he actually did a video about a year ago talking about why he's making these movies. I love this part of the video you're going to see. Without irony, he calls the Daily Wire's platform for these movies a safe space. I'm not joking, so let's watch some of this.
I'm really excited about it. A lot of the reviews that have been coming in about Shut In have noted what I think is really important, something that you and I and Caleb Robinson, our other business partner, decided very early on, which is if we were going to jump into entertainment, which was a risky move, we needed to make stuff that people actually wanted to see, not people felt like they had to see. We were going to provide people a safe space where they felt like they weren't going to be attacked for their values, but also we didn't want to make stuff that was like, it's morally obligatory for you to see this or you will burn in hell. It was more like, this is stuff that I would want to sit down with my wife and watch because it's on Netflix or Disney Plus or Hulu, but it's just not going to kick me in the groin over my values.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, people keep asking me, what's the defining characteristic of a Daily Wire movie? And I think over time, people will define our content more for what's not in it than what is. What I mean by that is that from a values point of view, of course, we want films that are consistent with our values, that our audience will agree with on a values level. But that doesn't mean that we're making, polemical or evangelical kind of content that's meant to change someone. We're making entertainment. We're making art. Sometimes art's even challenging. But what won't be in our movies is that left-wing sucker punch, that thing that we all experience every time we turn on the TV at night. Or you sit down with your family, you're watching a film, characters that you love, maybe a TV show, characters that you've spent years with, and then somewhere in the third act, the filmmaker has to tell you that he's glad to have your money, but these characters don't belong to you. They put in the left-wing diatribe or that joke at your expense that's just meant to alienate conservatives, meant to keep us in our place. That's what's not going to be in our movies.
So I haven't been following Ben Shapiro's career closely for like the last decade, more so like the last 5 or 6 years. Pretty sure he would have been trying to own people for wanting safe spaces and saying like facts don't care about your feelings. But here he is trying to create a conservative safe space for movies. But conservatives won't be offended by the sensibilities of said movie, like the other guy was saying as well. They don't want like that woke sucker punch in a TV show they like or a movie they like. They just want something that is good, but also isn't overtly like left-wing or liberal. But like I've said in like other videos, it's always amazing to me how these people will give such a pass to very left-wing movies as long as they don't have like really strong identity politics. So Ben Shapiro loves Blade Runner, Ben Shapiro loves the Dune movies. Think about all the either leftist messaging in those movies or what these people would consider woke messaging in these movies. Like Dune, for example, has like this anti-colonial message, which isn't necessarily woke, but these guys definitely would call its inclusion woke, but somehow they don't even realize the messaging is in that movie. But the thing is, I do actually think it's a smart strategy to say we want to make good movies first and not movies conservatives feel like they have to see. So like a lot of the times with like evangelical movies, they're like, you've got to see these movies, support this political message, but the movie is absolutely like god awful. So it does make sense that you want to make more like traditional movies, I guess, where it isn't all about how much atheists are bad or left-wingers are scum and stuff like that, although that probably is in these movies too. So that does make sense, but the problem being you have a guy like Ben Shapiro who both has pretty terrible movie taste. He loves Rise of Skywalker, especially the Palpatine twist, as we covered in last week's video.
And why is Rey even a thing? And the answer is because she's Palpatine's granddaughter, which is fantastic. Okay, that's a great reveal.
But also I think no matter how much money these guys have, I think the ceiling is just pretty low for their success, because even if they got someone like Mel Gibson or got someone like Vince Vaughn to star in like a Mel Gibson movie, these people just don't draw in the people they once did, and a lot of people are just not going to touch the Daily Wire. There aren't enough conservative actors who want to be on the Daily Wire. So I just don't think you'll ever be able to attract the talent to this organization, and of course they're never going to be able to compete with Hollywood anyway because of the funding. But also sometimes independent films do extremely well. They find their funding. One of my favorite films growing up was Drive, which was like a pretty independent film before being bought. I think it was only like $15 million to make, and that's pretty small compared to most budgets, and that did really well. So in theory, you could have a Daily Wire movie that could blow up and do really well, and then there would be a demand for it to be shown in cinemas across America and Russia and the UAE. But I just don't think that's going to happen, because if Terror on the Prairie is any indicator, these movies aren't good. So let's get into some reviews. Then we're just going to see what do conservative fans of the Daily Wire feel about these movies. Just on like Google reviews and IMDb. So Demi Reichardt, the storyline had potential. It was intriguing enough that I wanted to see what happens, but the overall film really gave off a low budget vibe in terms of acting and logistics. Overall, disappointed compared to the Daily Wire's other films, which I really enjoyed. I want Daily Wire to succeed, but this wasn't it. For someone else, I wanted to like this movie. I really did. I like to support Daily Wire, but this movie was awful. It was painful. Most of the movie was boring, stuffed the brim with filler content to extend the length of the movie. All in all, the movie was boring, painful to watch, and now I got my whole family teasing me about picking bad movies on movie night. That is absolutely hilarious. But yes, maybe don't pick a Daily Wire movie to show your friends and family. On IMDb, an incredibly dull Western. Let me just say, I love that Daily Wire is getting into entertainment. I've been a subscriber for over a year, and I'm not leaving anytime soon. However, this movie is not good. The characters here are so paper thin that I find it really hard to care how things turn out for them. The arcs are so generic and predictable that they might as well not even be there. The villain is very cliche, riding around, spitting intimidating Bible verses and scalping people. However, he's also probably the best thing in the movie. We are 4 movies in with the Daily Wire, and they are yet to make a movie that is particularly interesting. Shut In is still the high watermark for them, but even that was only okay, so yeah, strong 4 out of 10, not good. I very much wanted to like this Western from Hollywood outsiders Daily Wire and Gina Carano. Unfortunately, the plot is irritatingly dumb. Every decision made by each and every character in Terror on the Prairie only makes sense if everyone in the film is an idiot. I will continue to support the Daily Wire and Carano in all their endeavors, but this is a terrible film. Seen all the Daily Wire films so far, some good, some disappointing. This is the latter. Don't get me wrong, there's a film to be made here. Unfortunately, it's a bit boring and characters aren't completely fleshed out. Everyone is a bad shot, the story makes no sense, and it just plods to its inevitable conclusion. So I love the Daily Wire, I love Westerns even more. I am boycotting Disney, so I was excited to see the Daily Wire was uncancelling Gina Carano to make a Western. This movie, however, was not good. It recycles the plot of Shut In, puts it in a Western setting, and adds blood. That's about it. There's no life in this movie. If the Daily Wire wants to compete in the entertainment industry, they need to tone down the unnecessary violence and actually make a compelling story with lovable characters. And if they're going to make Westerns, they need to do them traditionally, follow the formula of John Wayne or Clint Eastwood. Daily Wire, I love you too much to pretend to love this movie. So there are, of course, positive reviews of this movie from conservatives talking about it being awesome and so entertaining. But even from the few reviews I read you there, conservative people who support the Daily Wire, they say the movie is boring, they say the characters are bad, and they say the acting isn't too notable either, and it's both really generic but also not fleshed out enough. It just seems to be a film about a woman locked in a house while a gang attack her and stuff. It doesn't sound too enthralling, in my opinion. That is also part of the problem, and that's why conservative films have never really taken off as like overtly conservative, because they're bad most of the time. Sure, they do have some fans, especially the religious ones, but they've never entered the mainstream because they're too focused on just having this political message to the film's detriment, and the films are always just like hilariously bad. And that is the problem, because even though at this moment a lot of conservatives are acting like, I will boycott Disney, I will boycott X, Y, and Z, everything's going woke, at the end of the day, most people still want to watch something entertaining. And if you're going to make a film like Terror on the Prairie, which isn't like overtly conservative and political like God's Not Dead 4 or something, then you actually have to make it good. So these people are always going to choose an MCU movie over this film. They're always going to choose Top Gun, or just like loads and loads of action movies, John Wick, stuff that comes out every year, which they don't necessarily get offended by because they can't find the reason to call it woke or something. But also on that note of trying to like get a conservative audience while getting more like casual audiences involved, I found a conservative review of Terror on the Prairie, which I found really funny. So we're going to read some of it now. On a blog called Biblical Reason, so a negative Christian review of Terror on the Prairie. So I'm just going to go to the bad section of the review. I was sorely disappointed. Not every evil deed committed under the sun needs to be portrayed, and not every deranged psychopath needs to be the object of our entertainment. Opting to portray in graphic detail acts of violence rather than leave them to be inferred, the film has an unhealthy obsession with violence that I believe is spiritually toxic. When people feed themselves on violence like this, they become more violent. A steady diet of this kind of violence desensitizes us to evil, which is the very thing that our adversaries, the devil, wants. Hearts and minds that become desensitized to evil and suffering are not capable of responding to the Holy Spirit, who pours out compassion and grace on people's suffering. I am very concerned by the degree of spiritual deception permeating the church in the West right now. How little discernment we seem to have. Do we not understand the times? Do we not understand the schemes of our adversary? The Daily Wire is being heralded by those who are supposed to be conserving values as supposedly championing the return of wholesome content. They are marketing themselves as producing movies that share your values, and Christians are consuming their content like crazy. But what values does Terror on the Prairie teach? Have Christians become so dull in the West that they think marriage is the only value that matters? This movie nods at spirituality, benign values in order to seduce us with a spirit of violence. Watching this kind of movie will corrupt your conscience and desensitize you to evil, which is the very thing that our adversary, the devil, wants. Christians should not watch this movie, and do not be deceived. We aren't free to walk however we wish. be careful what you allow to fill your heart, because the biggest spiritual threat of watching something like this is not that you will go out and become a deranged murderer, but you will cease to be bothered by such things and become deaf to the Holy Spirit. I do always love getting an insight into like American Christian conservative brains, because I've spoke about this before. As someone who was raised like Catholic in London in like an immigrant community, it always blows my mind how like fanatical and fundamentalist American Catholics or American Christians always are. Like, this language he's using about the literal devil and the literal Holy Spirit is so alien to like what I was raised in, but also is very important for the American conservative movement. Like, how powerful are evangelicals in terms of a voting bloc? Since Ronald Reagan really unleashed them, they are people you have to pander to when you're thinking about the broader conservative movement. And like I said, this is the line that the Daily Wire is trying to like weave between, because they know that there are people like this. There are Christians who hate watching violent stuff, and there are lots of parents who won't let their teenagers watch violent movies and say this stuff is sinful or made by the devil to corrupt your mind and stuff like that. And although that seems really insane to a lot of us, that is how a lot of people are often raised. And the Daily Wire is trying to appeal to those people as well as more mainstream people. But if all your films center around violence, because Ben Shapiro likes violent movies, for example, then you are going to alienate these conservatives. And like my point earlier is that the Daily Wire might not be able to have its cake and eat it too, because if it makes films that are more obviously about Christian conservatism or religious conservatism, they actually might be more profitable at the expense of being terrible. If you just go the other direction, where you make something like Terror on the Prairie, which is super generic and doesn't have many political themes or even religious themes, and then no one just wants to watch it, like the Christian conservatives like this guy, they don't want to watch it because it's too violent. Ordinary people don't want to watch it. It doesn't fill any niche. It doesn't fill any void they're looking for, because if they want better action, there's a million things they can watch on Netflix. So that really is the problem for the Daily Wire, and it doesn't seem like it's going to get much better. All their movies have pretty much just been average, even in terms of conservatives reviewing them, and when liberals review them, they just say they're pretty much terrible. Not on the level of God's Not Dead. I bet a lot of those Christian films probably turn some sort of profit, where it feels like if they make this exclusive to their streaming service, I don't think these movies are going to make their money back through new subscriptions. But anyway, I know this movie is old, but I just saw this tweet going viral and Gina Carano talking about it. So I thought I'd make a video. It is late on a Friday, so I thought I'd just have a bit more fun. It also is just like a nice follow-up to last week's video. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Like the video if you think God's Not Dead is good. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.